What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 249 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about The Wicked West. This is by basically the same creative team of The Black Forest, which I talked about yesterday. This is Neil Vokes, Todd Livingston, and Robert Tennell. And this is a very short graphic novel, about as long as The Black Forest. It is about this guy named Cactus who goes to a small town, Havers Creek, I believe is the town, to become a school teacher. And then while he's there, this vampire comes to town and basically just destroys the town. It's kind of like the plot of Salem's Lot, but as a Western. And meanwhile, you've also got this parallel story about 60 years later in the early 1930s where one of the few survivors from Havers Creek, who's just a boy when all that was happening in 1870, he is now taking his grandson to see a movie version of what happened in the early 1930s. And it's really cool getting to see how the movie cleans it up a little bit, makes it a lot less scary, but at the same time tries to make it a little bit more of a Hollywood action movie. So in the movie that this guy Roy is taking his grandson to see, the main character, he's going to town to become a sheriff. They need a new sheriff. Whereas what actually happened in Havers Creek, he's going to become a school teacher. And then the vampire, he looks a little bit like a Hispanic version of Vincent Price, whereas what actually happened in Havers Creek, the vampire looks much more terrifying. And this is a really cool conceit. I don't think I've ever seen a comic book do something like this. It's really neat getting to see just panel by panel how something is happening in Havers Creek in 1870 and how the movie version will change it a little bit. The movie adds a love interest for the main guy, and the grandpa who's watching it, he actually calls the movie out a little bit. He's like, yeah, that didn't happen. But then you get to see there is a girl in Havers Creek in 1870 who is, I guess, the template for the love interest in the movie, but it's very different than how it happens in the movie that this guy is going to see. This is a very short book. I wish it was a little bit longer, and the only reason I say that is because I really love this book, and I wish that we could have had more of this story. I wish we could have had a little bit more of the film version and a little bit more of what was actually going on in Havers Creek. There's one point where one of the characters who's already been turned into a vampire has been sort of kidnapped by this group of gangsters, not in the movie version of this story, but in the actual events. And I felt like I didn't know who these characters were. They just kind of showed up, and they were just introduced to be cannon fodder for the vampires to kill. But I wish we could have had a little bit more story, maybe, another 50 pages of story so that we could have been introduced to these guys a little bit earlier, so that we could be a little bit more like, oh, okay, these guys are about to be killed. That's really cool. Or, oh no, these guys are about to die. I like these characters, depending on how you feel about these characters. But really, that's my only problem, and since that's really a compliment, I feel like, saying that you liked it and you want more of it, then I don't feel like that's much of a problem. But I really love this book. This is probably one of my favorite of what I would call weird Western comics, where you've got the Western aspect, but then you have either horror or sci-fi or fantasy or something. I wish that this was a genre that got more play than what it does. But this is one of my favorite versions of the weird Western genre. So those are my thoughts on The Wicked West Volume 1, Abomination. I hope that you guys like this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.